Hey everyone, good morning. If you are a member of Concord, I would ask, just as we've asked all throughout this process, that you would not only listen to the announcement at the beginning, but the really important explanation and things that follow as we talk about going forward. So, we will be having an in-person service this Sunday at 11 a.m. in the sanctuary. It will be a socially distanced service as best we can. We're going to mark off every other pew. We're asking you to spread out as you come in. We will have some red social distancing bands. If you're really uncomfortable being close to someone, please keep an eye out for those. It just means somebody doesn't want a bear hug. They want you to kind of keep your distance. And that will help us kind of love one another well. We met with the deacons last night. That's where this decision is coming from. We are going to ask, we're not requiring, but we're asking that you wear a mask. We had a conversation. I want you to know we had a conversation about requiring masks, but it basically came down to if we did that, if someone was unwilling to wear a mask, we would have to ask them to leave. And nobody is crazy about asking folks to leave church, but we are. And the deacons asked me to emphasize as strongly as possible, we're asking you to wear a mask as a way to love your neighbor. We've talked a lot about laying down our preferences for the safety and to love others. And so we're asking that you wear a mask for a couple of reasons. Number one, we really want to prevent having to ride the seesaw that a lot of our schools are having to ride as outbreaks happen and things like that, and they've got to shut down for a few weeks, which is what we would have to do if we had an outbreak at Concord. And again, one of the best ways to do that is by wearing a mask. So we want to not be, in person for 2 weeks and then have to shut down because we had, multiple families get COVID and then have to come back. We want to try to prevent that, which is why we're asking you to wear a mask. But we're also asking you to wear a mask because we want you to know, in the time that we have been online over the last month, we know of at least 5 families in our church that have contracted COVID, most of them being folks that would have been at church, at least given they were before COVID. I say all that to say there will likely be some of us that have COVID that are in these services. And it may be that you woke up with the sniffles or you started having some sinus stuff, but it wasn't really serious. We want to prevent an outbreak as much as we possibly can. I recognize there will probably be an objection that you don't have to wear a mask anywhere else you go. We're not requiring it, but we are asking you to precisely because you don't have to wear a mask everywhere else you go. And so as we gather for this 1 hour, we're all bringing with us everywhere we have been. And so we want to do our best, A, to be able to continue to have services, and B, to keep one another safe. We're not saying that you don't love your neighbor if you don't wear a mask, but we are saying one of the best ways to love your neighbor on this Sunday morning and Sunday mornings, while things are really, cases are high right now, is to wear a mask. So those will be available at the door as well if you forget them, along with hand sanitizer, social distancing bands, just so that we can kind of keep an eye out for one another and sort of respect where you're comfortable. We will start Wednesday nights back in 2 weeks. If you watched the video this past last night, you saw I talked about we're going to have a special guest next week, so that will be an online only thing. But in 2 weeks on the 29th, we will start back having an adult Bible study in the sanctuary. Right now, because again, the deacons met last night, and so we're having a service on Sunday morning. We don't have enough time to get childcare together, so there won't be any childcare this Sunday. Again, parents, your children are always welcome. They're never a burden. They're never a distraction. We will have coloring sheets and things like that for them. And then moving forward, childcare is volunteer driven. So we've got to talk to volunteers and see if we can make childcare for children 5 and under happen. That's where we'll start. But I just want to pause for just a second at this point and emphasize something the deacons asked me to emphasize. This was a big part of the meeting, was we want to make sure you know that we are not asking you to come back to church. We are making this option available, but we recognize, we've heard from many of you, that you're just not at a point yet where you're comfortable, and we want to emphasize to you, no one is going to look down on you, no one is going to shame you, no one is going to think less of you for not being at an in-person service and continuing to watch online. And I really mean that. My family will not be here. Taylor's family will not be here. Neither of us are, yes, we're in ministry, but neither of us are at a point where we're comfortable having our families here. We really mean it when we say we're not going to think any less of you for not being here. So please don't do something you're not comfortable with, know that you're in good company. There are a lot of folks that are still right there with you, us included. So that is what's happening this Sunday. I want to talk a little bit about two things. Number one, how we're going to move forward with other ministries. And then number two, how we're going to think about decisions in the future, because I think we all recognize it's probably going to be other waves and things that we're going to have to deal with. It doesn't seem like COVID is going anywhere, especially in our part of the world. So the way that we're thinking about other ministries moving forward, we've been making decisions when we see a 2-week drop in cases. So a few weeks ago, EAMC was at 93. Now they're down to 67, which is great. The ventilator numbers have not really dropped, and cases are still skewing younger in age, meaning this isn't just something that's affecting older folks or folks that are just in poor health, but it's affecting folks across the age spectrum. We even have several kids in our church who have had this. They're okay, but again, just to be clear, when we talk about getting COVID or somebody who was really sick and had to go to the hospital but they didn't pass away, none of those things are good things. No one wants anybody's kids to contract COVID and to have to wrestle with that and deal with that and the fear that comes with that. No one wants to say, hey, I was out of commission for 2 weeks or had to spend some time in the hospital, but I survived and so it's okay. No one wants to say that's a good thing, right? We obviously all want to prevent one another getting it as much as possible. And so that's why we're making decisions based on the 2-week drop in cases. And so when we see another 2-week drop in cases, we'll start having conversations about Sunday school, about children's ministry on Wednesday nights, some of those things where we're in close proximity with one another, more so than in a service context. When we're in a Sunday school room, when you're in the children's ministry wing, it's closer quarters, tighter confines. And so we'll start those conversations when we see another 2-week drop in cases. And again, I say start those conversations because all of those ministries are volunteer driven. Sunday school teachers, children's ministry, Sunday school teachers, volunteers, all of those things happen based on a large number of people being willing to be there. And the one thing that we, I want to emphasize this, we as a staff and the deacons are not willing to do is to try to guilt trip or strong arm a volunteer who's not comfortable to return and serve before they're willing. We're just not willing to do that. If you're not comfortable and you're a volunteer, we're not going to put your feet to the fire and say, hey, we really want to start this ministry back and we need you to be here. So those ministries will have to begin when we have enough volunteers to make them happen. So what this means going forward in the future as it relates to other waves, it's our goal to think about church ministries on 2 different levels. So our goal is at the top level, the thing we want to keep constant is having some form of in-person service. Now, again, that may have to be in the gym, may have to be outside. There are a lot of unforeseen circumstances. We're talking about the future here. None of us expected the last 2 years to play out the way they have. So can't make a ton of promises aside from we want to commit to trying to have some form of in-person service as a constant. Now, again, maybe the world shuts down again. We have to revise that. But to the best of our ability, Lord willing and the creeks don't rise, we want to keep an in-person service as a constant moving forward despite waves and things like that. But what that will mean is that we've got to treat other ministries, things like Sunday school, things like children's ministry, the things that have us in close proximity with one another in small spaces, we're going to have to treat those with open hands because they are volunteer driven. And so, it may be that we have another rise and we have volunteers that are not comfortable. And so we got to phase a few of those things out for a little while maintaining the service. That's the goal, is to continue to have an in-person service while we hold some of those other ministries with open hands as best we can. Just wanted to answer one question that I know we may get. Why don't we just start back having a service in the gym? The reason for that is several. Number one, there's no way for us to have a simple service in the gym just to put up the speakers and run sound, because streaming online is such an important part of what we're doing right now. In order to do that, we have to have the computers and the camera, and in order to make that work with the sound, you got to have the soundboard, and then you've got to have the computers that run the projection and the words and all of those things. So it's kind of a complete package to have a service in the gym, which entails moving everything from the sanctuary down, which is about a 2-week process. It takes about a week to move, and then you got to plug it in and get it set up, and then you got to troubleshoot. As many of us know who have unplugged and replugged in electronics, something always goes wrong. So it's about a 2-week process to move it down, 2-week process to move it back. So if we were going to have a service in the gym, we would need to commit to being down there for a while. And we hope with the new floor is in, it's installed. If you're here on Sunday, we'll open up the doors. You can walk through and see it. But we hope as things calm down that we can start having children's ministry stuff in the gym, and basketball and pickleball and all those things going on. And we wouldn't be able to do that with 180 chairs in the gym. So those are a few reasons. Also, when it comes to social distancing, obviously we remember we sat in chairs, but we were again around one another in close proximity. So if that was the way social distancing went down there, we can try to do that just as well up in the sanctuary, because it's obviously not going to be 100%. So I'm sure that I have missed something in this video. I'm sure you may have a question, want some clarification on something that I have not covered. I'm doing my best to relay everything that the deacons asked me to relay. But if you have a question, please email, call, send a text, and we will try to get that answered for you. But just to recap, we will have a service 11 a.m. on Sunday morning. Masks are not required, but we're asking you to wear them. And that will be the only thing going on campus this Sunday. And then we will be working on childcare, hopefully in the weeks to come. Don't know when we can phase that back in. And we'll talk about other things that are on the calendar, things like a new member class, things like the fall festival, and trying to figure out how to navigate those. So that's what we're doing right now. Thank you for sticking with me through the end of this video. God bless you, and we'll talk to you soon.